Hey folks, Alex Manier again with Common Sense Firearms Training out here in Las Vegas, Nevada. The purpose of this video, we're actually going to talk a little bit more about the difference between kind of training versus practice, okay? And also we kind of go into what we've seen throughout a lot of places, and you got to be very cautious about some of these training places that we'll go to. First thing I want to make sure everybody understands is any training is good training. There's no such thing as bad training. Anytime you get out and you practice and you get some education, you're doing the right thing. But there are a few things that we can start kind of veering away from that some people tend to veer towards, and that's more things like the cost of training can actually become very expensive if you think about adding a lot of rounds, if you think about adding a lot of targets, if you think about adding a lot of time. So these kinds of concepts don't necessarily always have to play out, okay? One thing we like to do is we like to try and show people how easy it can be by letting people kind of think about what they can use for targetry. So, for example, a perfect target out there, if we're talking about like an 8-inch circle or you're talking about a 4-inch circle, they make 8-inch paper plates. They make 4-inch paper plates. You can buy them in bulk and dirt cheap. And I mean, all you're going to do to it is you're going to put a hole in it anyway with a bullet, so why do you want to spend a lot of money on it? You know, go out, find something that's simply cost effective, okay? And then the other thing that we really like to go through when it comes to talking about bullets and round count, it's not necessarily, you don't need to have 1,000 rounds in a day to be a good effective training program. Most of our day-long courses tend to go through anywhere between 250 to 300 rounds or so. That's and that's for a full 8 hours of training. And we got to remember that the whole concept behind the bullet itself is the bullet is basically kind of confirming that the training is correct, because a bullet tells the truth. Hands down, it's the one thing that will never lie. So if that bullet hits the target the way it's supposed to, then whatever you did to that gun prior to it going off, you did right. Now, you might not have done it on purpose, but you still did it right. So what that tells you is that if you just got a perfect bullseye hit, even though you might not have meant to, you probably should go back and think about what you just did that was different from the times that you were missing. Because again, the bullet doesn't lie. So these are things that we can kind of think about. And when it comes to our practice, practice doesn't always have to be involved when we go to shooting. We don't have to practice by going to the gun range and putting hundreds and hundreds of rounds through our firearm. We can actually spend a lot of time practicing, especially the majority of these skills, on an unloaded gun on our own time. Now, there's a lot of things that have to go into that when it comes to what we call dry practice, and you know, you need to make sure you have identified that they're in a good, safe location. You need to make sure that you don't have any ammunition in that area. You need to triple check. I mean, they say double, we say triple, man. You've got to make sure there's no ammo out there, okay? Because again, the second you think that you're good and you don't give it that second look, that's the time that you're going to end up having the mistake. But the nice part about it is if you take that time, if you take that preparation to it, and you go ahead and practice, and you get a lot of this stuff in there, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to see a lot of your skills tighten up for you, and when you go to the range, now instead of shooting a whole bunch of rounds and trying to figure out what I need to do to fix it, instead what you're doing is you're shooting those rounds off saying, hey, that training bit worked. Or if it does this particular thing on the target, maybe that tells me that I actually have this one fundamental that I need to work on and fix. Okay, so we can use our rounds much more effectively if we simply apply how they're going to get used. Okay, now some things you have to put bullets through the gun to practice. You know, it doesn't do you any good to try and think about handling recoil when there's no recoil. You got to fire a shot for that. So there's a happy medium in there. But what I will tell you is that a lot of places out there will go through 2,000 rounds in a day, and there's really no need for that. So, you know, just be careful about that. Caveat I want to add to that, though, there are some training programs that they will go through a lot of ammunition in a day of training, and they are phenomenal programs. So the most important thing to think about when it comes to your training versus your practice is something you do on your own. Practice is something that you can do over and over again on your own time. You can't overdo it, so don't do too much in terms of like, you know, don't spend 12 hours in a day practicing. Make it realistic, okay? But if you practice and you practice and you practice, and what happens is when you go to training is something that should expose you to new ideas, and it should expose you to new thought processes, and expose you to new skill sets. Practice is taking all of those concepts, and we need to basically roll it up so that it can actually be produced then when we shoot the shot, okay? Keep that in mind. Remember, no training is bad training. This is Alex Manier with Common Sense Firearms Training. Get out, get educated, stay safe.